the cloud. Okay,
There you go.
Right, you got a few users on there now.
You recording?
Hello.
yes. Hello.
We're just getting set up.
Okay, it's Jeff Cugno. How are you?
Good. This is just the plain telephone.
Maybe he's Ashley.
Oh,
He's the plain telephone.
Oh, I see.
Tom Reed. Oh,
he's the top.
And Tom McCary now too. Okay, good.
oh, he's gonna.
Hey, guys.
He's
We
gonna
see you and we
go
hear
with
you.
Picture. Can you see our little man in the group?
What is that in the glass you're drinking?
Glass,
The one you just
Uh,
tipped up to your mouth.
water.
Okay.
Something clear.
What about the bottle on the other hand?
So, sorry. I wish it was more fun than that.
Does anybody else want the CES 3 code amendment?
Obviously, all of you have done what you're accusing Tom of doing, since you know.
All right, Lisa, you want to start?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Town Berlin Public Building Commission. I'm going to have Lisa do a roll call so we get it on record who's here and present.
So in person, we have Jim Millette, Mick Tarsi, Don Lombardo, and Vice Chair Bart Mulvey, and staff Micah Hearn in person. And then I've already heard from Tom Salamino.
Yes,
And-
present.
And Tom Reed, Chair at the Cape.
All right, thank you. I will just ask everybody who's online watching us. I know we've had this problem with other meetings. If you're not speaking, would you please mute yourself until it's time for you to speak so we don't get you backfeed into the system? First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from February 11th, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Second,
Second.
do we have any discussion?
That was Lombardo and Tarsi.
Any
You got-
discussion?
This,
Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, motion's approved. Number 3 on the agenda is the audience of citizens. Anybody here wishes to speak in the audience of citizens? See, we have a group of people online.
We have one unknown.
well,
Jeff Kugno.
Jeff,
Tom
no,
Reed.
Ashley and Cynthia and Tom are.
Okay.
Hi, this is
Nobody-
Doug. Doug's online too.
Hey,
Oh,
Doug.
good,
Doug's online too. How are you guys? How are everyone? Hi, good evening.
good.
Okay, so nobody here from the audience of citizens. Let's go to number 4, the Senior Center, Community Center update. I don't know if Mike or Tom want to jump in and start with the whole,
I think I defer to Tom. We've been going back and forth for a couple of days, so I think he's got a little bit of a report and an update and probably some questions about timing. Tom, it's all yours.
Great, thank you. So over the last month, we've focused most of our time on responding to any questions from the public or through the website that we've received and incorporating some of that feedback into the design. The majority, I'll let Cynthia talk about the website and some of the questions that we've received. But the majority of our feedback has been about the aquatic center, the pool, and what that's going to be. I received some conversation from the Parks and Rec Commission, and they informed me that they are going to actually change their statement of need to add a few details regarding the what the aquatic center should have. So I'm waiting to hear back on that. That's positive, I guess. And we have been working on a revised exterior concept that is more traditional than contemporary. I have to be a little frank, it hasn't been at the top of our list on the production side. When I spoke with Mike this week, I realized, oh, we got to get that done. So my plan is to present the updated renderings and concepts that demonstrate any feedback we've received from the public as well at the next building committee meeting, if that's acceptable. One of our next steps will be that we have to actually get a professional cost estimate put to the concept that we have at hand. I think now is an okay time to do that, or at least develop the first draft of what this project would cost in its current form. And then we would go from there. The committee can use that information to guide us. What do we do with the form of the building? Do we make it bigger? Do we make it smaller? So I think that's something we could embark on. And then the last thing was to start thinking about re-engaging public information meetings. We talked a little bit about timing as to when we want to do that. Ideally, we would do a good amount of that within a couple months prior to getting ready to go to referendum. I spoke to Mike a little bit about when the opportunities to go to referendum with a project like this would be. There's a referendum in April, but we don't meet the time requirements, and there's currently a referendum established in November for the election time frame. So as of right now, unless a special referendum was held to address just this project, it looks like this project would probably go to referendum in November. If that's the case, and all the language has to be established a couple months prior to referendum, 8 to 10 weeks, that would put us back, let's say November 1, that goes backward to October, September 1. So we really want to do our public outreach no later than, let's say, June, July, and August. So what I'm thinking is, with the pace of inoculations increasing, it probably makes sense to start scheduling something at the end of April, do some preliminary meetings in May, make some revisions to the documentation, and then do a second round of public information sessions in June, July. And then get the Public Building Commission to make a formal recommendation towards the end of July or the beginning of August. That time frame may want to shift backwards a little bit, depending on, what we need for time to make preparations for the referendum. But I think that's a good signpost as of right now. The other thing we can talk about is ooh, did I lose Cynthia? Did she go? Oh, looks like she left.
There.
She's still on?
Yeah.
If Cynthia is still on, maybe she could talk a little bit about the website and some of the activity we've received. Cynthia?
We can't hear you, Cynthia.
Check your mute.
If you're muted, please unmute yourself.
I put her on the spot. She can't handle the pressure.
I think he's trying to talk.
Yeah.
There, her headphone symbol went off. Now it's on. Now it's off. Now it's on.
Technical difficulties.
Got this new technology.
I guess I can steal her thunder and talk a little bit about it. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but we received approximately 1,100 comments from about 950 different separate users.
Tom, I have her email. Do you want me to just run through her analytics?
Oh, that would be great if you would help me. I don't
Yeah,
have.
'cause,
the number.
yeah, all right. So she sent an email, Cynthia sent an email with some analytics. She said that to date, the website has had 1,178 total site sessions or clicks. And of that number, 930 are unique visitors, meaning 930 individual users clicked for a total of 1,178 times. 781 were referred through Facebook, and 519 are in Berlin, Connecticut. And Tom, do you want me to read the messages too? Or paraphrase?
You could read a couple of the messages so they get a flavor of the
Yeah,
types
I'll-
of feedback we're getting.
Yeah, so to paraphrase, one was just so glad to see the project moving forward, yada, yada, and I didn't mention the pool. And then there was another rather lengthy one that had suggestions of what could be included, including solar panels, charging stations, solar powered, let's see, charging stations for electric cars, solar panels on the roof, solar panel carports, charging stations, and obviously we have to have Wi-Fi. Green walls, gray water technology, pedestrian bike friendly road marking trails, bike tool kiosks, bike bridges, a raised stage theater venue option, climbing wall, golf simulator, that's nice, and a vendor space for various things, nutritionists, massage therapy, etc. So that's it.
Oh, this is a senior center and somebody wants a climbing wall.
Yeah, but they also want a golf simulator.
Yeah, I know. We can eliminate that. That's just, I mean, in my opinion, somebody was playing a joke on that. That's ridiculous.
All right, so I'm done with her Cynthia's update.
Well, sounds great. If I can comment on some of that feedback, first of all, remember the center would be a community center, and it would serve a significant portion, or all the residents of the town of Berlin, and potentially many from outside of Berlin. But keep in mind that community centers tend to be very flexible in their programming. So while a golf simulator or a dedicated simulator space, might be an expense the project can't realize, we have multi-function spaces that could be fit out in the future if somebody wanted to, take that program on. So the space would accommodate that in the future. As far as the climbing
but it
wall
would be
goes, same goes for the climbing wall. We'd have a gymnasium or activity spaces. If the budget allowed in the future and the tenants wanted to make that investiture in the equipment, we would have the physical capacity to incorporate that.
Look, I take your point, but everything ought to be super generic. In this stuff, there's a donkey in the backyard pooping money for all this, and we better find it because this is way beyond the original scope of what somebody wanted. While it's all nice and sounds great, I think the cost of that would be beyond exorbitant. That's just my opinion.
Understood,
So
and it's
chase down these shadows and box with these shadows is sort of, I mean, we could do this forever and a day. At some point, the plane leaves the tarmac and we have to get going with what we want. So, and it's just exactly what happened with the diving pool. I mean, we could stay here and we could go through the next 2 years and just open it up and have some people say, oh, I think we'd like to do this. We have to decide what we want to do and then decide, like, if the town wants it, they're going to have to vote on it. So I don't want to encourage too much of this, any more ideas. Just, put a date in, this is my opinion, put a date in and say after this, the discussion is over.
These aren't ideas, Tom. These are just comments on the website. We don't have to act.
No,
on
I get it.
It's
I
just
get it,
simple.
but they tend to turn into, I mean, if we so we can ignore comments. If it's just comments, we can ignore them, or we can chase them down.
We can't-
Everybody had
we
the
can't just-
opportunity for a long time to participate in meetings with Tom. He did a fabulous job. This is when this stuff should have come to fruition. Not after the fact, after somebody sees something and says, I don't like the square building. I want to see 2 church steeples because it fits in with the architecture of the town. It would, in my opinion, it's going to drag this on and take forever. Now, but obviously I will go along with whatever the PBC and the town want to recommend, but I wouldn't go too far with this. I think you did a tremendous job with the original intent of coming up with what to me is an outstanding senior center / community center. That's just me.
Well, and having some discussions with people from the Park and Rec, or at least a person in the Park and Rec, I can tell you that I've said, if not once, 500 times, we do not have a final plan yet. We are looking for comments. And I totally
Right.
agree that we don't have a plan. We're looking for information and comments. I think once we go through this iteration, Tom then takes these comments, incorporates them into a quote unquote final plan. We have our second round of comments. I think that's when it's like, okay, everybody's had their ideas. This is what's incorporated. This is what the statements of need were. This is what we put into the plan, and this is.
Well, that's not true. So, Tom, you made one comment. You said the Park and Rec is developing another statement, a statement of need. Tom Arcuri?
That is correct. They did say they were in the process of wanting to revise their statement in need, and that would have to go through, to town council, and it would have to, it's a longer process. The revisions they're talking about making aren't very significant. It had to do with the aquatic center and having the ability for the pool to be a competitive pool and having diving capacity. We'll see what comes of that, but it's a process they're going through right now. We're working from the original statement in need, but we are taking into consideration feedback that we receive from the community. And, when we get feedback from the community, those things that align with or augment what's in the statement of need are things that we want to try and incorporate to make the concept stronger. Things that come in that were outside of the statement of need are things that we'll take for consideration, but without, really the town's approval to go beyond the statement of need, we won't incorporate those.
I would say that.
Well, I would submit then that every one of these comments in suggestion 2 belongs in a statement of need, and it's really not up to the PBC to do this. It's up to the town council to negotiate a statement of need with the people. I mean, we could put in all sorts of stuff, but the town council has to take charge of this and not defer it to us. We're supposed to get that statement of need and then find a cost-effective way to do it, the best way. And we can't keep going back and forth as a commission with 9 different suggestions. Oh, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do this? That's the job of the people who are proponents of this and the town council to come up with a statement of need.
Okay.
And too many times, in my opinion, the town doesn't do that. They just leave it to us, and I don't think that's right. That's not why we're here.
So Tom Arcuri, the only thing I was going to suggest is when you do get those comments, maybe you just develop kind of a spreadsheet and forward it off to Mike and her so you can present it to the town council and they can just see some of the input from the community, right? That really doesn't come to us anyway. It's good to hear good comments, but any additional stuff, I should just go to town council.
We can do that.
And I can give you an update. I know the Park and Rec Commission tonight approved the change of the statement of need. They're looking to go to the council at the next meeting. So And I have no idea what additional expenses are gonna be had by what they wanna propose, so kind of left it,
Well, it's technically no additional expense at this point because we never priced it yet.
correct.
So,
Well,
Right.
that's increase the risk.
yeah.
But it's not fair to Tom either, because he designed something and now someone else wants to go back and revisit the exterior and make it look, that's just adds to Tom's cost. And I think, I'm just cognizant of the fact that we can't ask Tom to keep doing stuff for gratis. He's getting paid for his time and for his product. So, all right, I'm going to mute myself because I'm getting irritated over this, but it's been festering for a while.
I did have a question, no, just one question. Tom was gonna get a cost estimator to start working up costs, but there's a revised statement of need that may add cost. I'm just throwing it out there, do you want him to wait until the statement of need comes back to see what the impact is, or do you want him to start working with his consultant? That's just my question.
Do we know what's changing in the statement of need?
They're adding the.
Tom, I think Tom has seen it, Tom might actually, I think a diving well, and I haven't seen it.
Sounds like the pool's getting deeper.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I-
I'm sure Todd,
Based on what I heard, I don't think the changes were going to be that significant from the concept. Remember, this is a concept design right now, so everything is, a little bit rough order of magnitude. We could, if those changes come in, we could obviously switch gears and make the adjustment to the estimate. It takes about 3 weeks to do an estimate. So by the time I get the estimator under contract and get him moving, we probably won't have the estimate for about 4 weeks. So if that information comes in the meanwhile, we could switch gears and get it adjusted in the estimate. Keep in mind, the estimate is something that's going to be dynamic as well. So we're going to get an estimate. We're going to get a really good understanding of what the concept that we've currently have on the boards, what it costs. And then you guys are all going to take a big gulp and we may have to make some changes. So it is something that will be revised a few times before it goes to referendum, I suspect.
Thanks.
We won't take a big gulp. We're just gonna forward it on to the town council.
Any other questions for Tom?
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Bob.
I need to make sure I have the regular meeting dates on my calendar. If Leisha would do me the favor sometime this week in all of her free time, send me the scheduled dates for the year, I'd appreciate it. It may actually be on the website. And
We'll send it to you.
all right, thank you,
It is, but
folks.
it's the second Thursday of every month, so I'm looking at it right
okay.
now, but it is on the website.
Okay. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is Board of Education Commissioning, Balancing, and Temperature Control Referral. Mike?
Yeah, I'll start off, but Doug Solik is here.
Okay.
For the last town council meeting, this item was referred to the PBC. And maybe Jeff's on here as well as Doug to just, I need to go through it. And I guess this is really to get the recommendations from the commissioning and balancing reopening report that just came into the Board of Ed. Doug, you there?
Doug, you there? Unmute?
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. How are you?
Good.
Hey, Doug.
Yeah, I'll certainly let Jeff and then Ashley from the board speak, on their point of view. But we went through the guidelines from what the state health department recommended for all schools to reopen. What we kind of anticipated and knew all along was the high school and the middle school were in great shape because they're the newest and the most updated equipment, but the middle school or the elementary school is having the oldest unit ventilators scheduled for replacement someday, knowing that we would find some issues. We can open windows, get fresh air, but there's certainly some deficiencies. And then there's also some recommendations within that report that we're looking for some guidance on. Following the CDC and the DPH, we don't have to really do much, but there's certainly some great recommendations on ensuring better air quality in the current condition in the state of the equipment in the elementary schools. So we just wanted everybody to see it and have a chance to review and weigh in on any recommendations. And Jeff and Ashley are on also. They can speak on behalf of the board.
Hey, Doug, it's Tom. When you say we're looking for some guidance, who precisely are you looking for that guidance from? The state, the health department, the town's attorney? What us? Just to be clear, I don't quite get what you mean there.
Yeah, it's a little open-ended because these are, recommendations. They're not code-driven issues. They're not laws. They're not mandates. They're recommendations that can be interpreted many different ways by many different people. So just for continuity.
Recommendations by CES or by others?
Correct, by the consultants, the air bouncers, the commissioning agent. They compiled some recommendations within the report for if we wanted to do something to enhance the air quality or temporarily. There's some options out there. So,
hi, good evening, folks. This is Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
Hello.
Yeah,
Yes,
we hear you.
Yeah.
Good
Can hear
evening,
you.
folks. Okay. Just to add to what Doug is saying, a little bit of background. Back when these guidelines were put together by the state of Connecticut for air quality under COVID, there was, a lot of discussion in what schools all over the state, very frankly, and if not farther, we're going to be looking at if they were meeting these air quality guidelines. We had a number of discussions that started in the summer. There was some demand, very frankly, from some of the unions and the Board of Ed and so on and so forth, teachers and whatever, to have the air quality checked out in the older buildings and in all the buildings to make sure that they were meeting the guidelines and to see what they could do. What was decided by the town is they would commission a study. So the study you have in front of you today was commissioned by the town, paid for by the town, paid for by the town. And when it got completed, and it took quite a while, they did stuff during the fall. We had to have it completed by the end of December, at least the field work, in order to be eligible to be paid for under one of the grants that came from the federal government. But at any rate, they did that, and then they did a lot of fine tuning on their report. Just recently, they completed the entire report, the executive summary, and all the information that I'm assuming is in front of you. When that came in, it was decided upon by not only, and correct me if I'm wrong, Doug, but not only by the town manager's office, but also by the mayor's office, that the correct body to review this information and what they continue to say were the experts in the town and from a commission standpoint on HVAC and things of this nature was the Public Building Commission. So what they did is they passed a resolution, they brought it to the town council, and the town council, whatever it was last week or the week before, passed a resolution to refer this study to the Public Building Commission for review and recommendation on what could be done in the facilities based upon the study. So it's actually the PBC that they're looking to get recommendations from and possibly a plan on how to go forward.
Okay, Jeff, we're a little lost because none of us have seen the report. I guess there was just a little mix up in getting things passed out.
Doug Solik emailed it like a week
It was
or something.
about 6 attachments,
Good-
and it was a lot of stuff. The report itself was like 300 and almost.
What day
300
did you mail it, Doug?
And
I think Lisa forwarded Doug's
I just
original email.
forwarded it
You forwarded it?
to you all.
Okay, I saw that.
But anyway, it was just referred anyway to you.
Maybe it was too big, because I didn't get it.
I haven't seen anything.
Okay,
Jeff, we haven't seen the report.
Well, that's interesting. I'll listen, I'm assuming that Doug and I can get you the report however you need to get it. It is a report. We've had it for a while, and matter of fact, I think I have it here in the file. Not that will help you at the moment, but we
Hey,
can
Jeff?
make sure yes.
Jeff, this is Mike. We can forward it. Doug sent us the report, and I think it's about 6 or 7 attachments. It's got the recommendations, it's got the report, it's got the town council agenda item and the referral itself. So I'll send that.
What was the date that was
Right.
sent? Was it sent to us?
I think it was
I have
last.
every email.
Um,
What's that? And I don't see any from Doug. None.
no.
No.
It was. I think it was just to us.
Doug sent it to Mike and Mike had me forward it to you all and I attached it well before the agenda was written up.
If it
Right,
was-
I'm looking, okay. I remember a report here, wait a second.
Came from Lisa.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Do you remember the date you sent it out, Lee?
No,
Wait,
2/8, February 8th.
Okay.
Okay.
But that was before the.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
All right, I do have it, Jeff.
Jeff, could you just
Okay.
kind of
Oh, yeah,
summarize?
right, but I didn't realize it wasn't clear that all of a sudden this was handed off to the BBC. I thought this was for us sort of FYI.
Well,
I'm certainly not an
Yeah.
expert on air, nor do I think any of us are. I think we would have to, I mean, this thing, I remember looking at this going, I can't even read the print, it's so small.
So it'll take some study time.
Yeah.
What kind of time frame are you guys looking at?
Well, let me just say, we obviously work on put it in the PBC. I think what the intention was is for you folks to discuss it and basically at least the alternatives and whatever. Maybe there's a good possibility that we could get the consultant to come in and address any questions as far as you guys have and any ideas about the alternatives. And I certainly don't want to speak for the town manager or the town council or anybody else, but I believe that they're looking for the Public Building Commission, which is why they wanted the council first to refer to you to be looked at as a potential project and with alternatives and what should happen in the short term and the long term. That's the discussion that I heard when it was referred to you. So I
Okay,
think
this
you've
is
got a
how we
potential-
got it.
I
For
think
your
you-
reference, it says here, for your reference and to share with the commissioners. We are planning
No,
a meeting
listen-
with town and
Yeah, but-
BOE reps to discuss the next steps. And I'm not sure this could be added to the agenda as yet, public information. So that's the extent of what I got, and I think
Okay.
everybody else got together with this report.
Okay,
Listen,
listen, you might have got, what I just heard while I was listening here is that you had the report sent to you for information purposes earlier
Yeah.
than that, and now referred it to you. So what you've got to jump out, and I don't know why you didn't get it the other way, but the point is what you've got to jump to now, respectively, is what the town council just referred to you at their last meeting. And it has to do with referring this project, I may say, to the town, to the PBC, and it's based upon the study that you, I guess, already have.
Okay,
So
Jeff,
it's the town council, yes.
okay. I haven't seen the report, but I would imagine that the elementary schools are the ones with the biggest problems. Is that a fair assumption?
That's what I understand from people that are more technical than I am, that have read all the issues and the deficiencies in the report.
Okay, Don?
Yeah, so my question to you guys is, do you guys have any preliminary order of magnitude numbers from the consultants that filed this report?
Before we get there, so Doug, so reading through this list really quickly here, I see a couple of units that look like they're kind of shot, but I see a lot of maintenance issues, right? Doug, are you on mute?
No?
Yes, I'm here.
So I'm reading through this report rather quickly here. I see, a lot of stuff that looks like maintenance issues, like coming in and doing some stuff. And then I see some units that look like they might be, at the end of their life. So it looks like like a 25, 75 split, maybe it's more. Some units need to be replaced. Some units just need to be new ventilator controllers or clean fins, replace filters, change valves. So have you looked at this report? How much of this is maintenance and how much requires our attention?
Right. It's the, I don't know if you saw the other attachment, but there's the initial deficiency report within the master report of the 300 pages. And then there's a separate attachment of the updated deficiency list, which we did in conjunction with the project as we were finding these deficiencies. So the actual deficiencies now are narrowed down to pretty minuscule things. There's two caveats to the report of, obviously we know that the Willard Elementary HVAC has been in discussion for renovation for many years. That's the project on the table. Whether we're going to do one elementary school at a time or do it comprehensively or as a whole, how much we're going to bond. And then the caveat to this is the recommendations of the report. If we extract those recommendations in the interim, we know we're not going to have new HVAC units in any of these elementary schools the summer of 2021 or 2022. Therefore, what can we do in the interim to address any air quality concerns based on the recommendations provided by the consultant in the report? That's kind of what this recommendation is in front of you tonight. Referral from the council.
Hey, Doug, I don't have the report in front of me. This is Jeff. Can you summarize what the alternatives are that the consultant mentioned in the report?
But, portable air filtration units, air scrubbers, ultraviolet lights, anything portable that can be used. I'm sure many of you are seeing these out in the industry in your line of work. There's plug-in feel-good things that we can use, but, do we need to do that? And because it's a recommendation, not a code or a mandate or a law, is it worth doing something? Should we do something? Should we not? And that's what we're kind of turning to you guys for advice based on the recommendations of the consultant.
Bob, let me ask a different question. Hold on before we go one step further. The kids are in school right now, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
So regardless of what this says, the kids are subject to the existing conditions right now. So I just want to make sure that we're not keeping kids out of school because of the deficiencies mentioned in this report.
No, we're not doing that.
Okay.
What we're doing is reporting to the teachers union and the parents who were very supportive, from what I understand, of getting this study done, because there had already been considerable rumors that the air quality in some of our buildings were not that great. And I'm just repeating what I'd heard. And therefore, what they're really anticipating here is that if we cannot do new HVAC systems, obviously quickly, and nobody expects us to do that, we know they're long-term projects, that there are some short-term alternatives, which Doug just spoke about, that many institutions, boards of eds, and so on and so forth are putting in their buildings in the short term to make sure the air quality meets the guidelines of the state. So I guess one of the questions that would be in front of the PBC is, are these alternatives good ones? Are they anything to be worthwhile in the short term if the town wants to put them in the school buildings? Because we're not going to have new HVACs for years. That's what's on the table.
So
This is
Tom. Hey, Tom, hold on a second. So this is what I want to understand. So if we get these recommendations, let's get them out to bid. Let's find out what the costs are. Let's look at the alternatives for the rental equipment to go in the building, and let's do a cost analysis, and let's break it down by school and understand what we're talking for dollars before we go much further. Does that make sense to everyone? Because we could debate these issues till you're blue in the face. I live this every day, and I'm telling you right now, that's probably the best way to go right now, is get numbers on this, understand it, and break it down by school, and then we can make a decision based on per building, let's say, short of a better term.
I think that's this is Jeff. I think that's a great idea, and I think that's the kind of action that was kind of expected going forward.
Well, it'd be not, yeah, and Jeff, it would be nice if the town council sort of directed us to do that instead. I'm hearing that this is sort of going to us by osmosis.
Well,
so clear direction with this is something that's critical, because this could be a lot of time and a lot of money.
yeah, and I got to tell you, I don't know. I don't have in front of me. Unfortunately, I'm home, but I don't have in front of me what exactly the town council resolution was. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if it has detail in it or not. But again, I don't want to speak for the town council, but I believe the intent is what was just suggested, that there was an evaluation done or recommendations considered, and I think that there's a plan. Well, it's not a plan. I think that there could be a plan, depending on what the recommendations are and what you guys find out, to be able to fund some of these short-term activities. That's the kind of conversations I've been in.
Going back to what Jim Millett started saying, there's a portion of this that's deferred maintenance, which we need to vet out and understand what that is completely.
Right.
And there's a portion that
Right.
that needs to meet the, let's call it the revised standards for clean buildings. So I think we really need to break it down into those two categories and understand what that is and get pricing on it. And then from there, again, we can make an informed decision as a group.
Who does that?
Right. Well, I mean, I agree, but under the theory of you only know what you know, right now, before 20 minutes ago, I knew nothing about this other than there was a 367-page report that somebody was going to let us know for our information purposes. Now, all of a sudden, we're leading the project, or we're going to be, thanks to Jeff coming to the meeting and alerting us. So, while Don, I agree with you that that's the way to go, is to absolutely separate deferred maintenance from systemic, or from a problem that we're going to have because of the systems that are in place. This is still going to be a lot of time to separate that and to get it done. And then number two, has this been made public yet, this report?
Well, I will tell you that it was, let's see, who do we think has this report? We discussed it at the Board of Ed, and the Board of Ed members have a copy of the report. So very frankly, it would be a public report at that point.
Okay.
And I'm,
Yes,
actually,
it was submitted.
Yeah.
Excuse me,
submitted
sorry,
to the town council is public.
Correct. It's public because it was on the town council agenda, so therefore it is public.
Okay.
This is Jim Millett again. So what I was trying to get to, along with the maintenance and units that were bad, as we all know, there was a large bill that was signed by the president today, and a good portion of that is to help get schools back on track. So I'm guessing in the very immediate future, there's going to be a drastic shortage of UV lights and RTU units and everything that we're talking about. So if Doug or somebody could nail something down, I think that you have to pull the trigger a lot faster than you're going to get a reaction from us and the town council. That you might want to try to go after some of that fund that's going to the state of Connecticut to help get the schools back up and functional, and maybe some of that preliminary stuff like the UV. I mean, we've added those in our office, so I don't know the full extent of what they do, but obviously we put them in, and it sounds like a quick help. It helps the situation, but all that stuff's going to be in high demand, and it's going to be in short supply here very quickly. So if there's a quicker avenue of getting to the goal line, you need to, kind of look it over, Doug and Jeff, and maybe find a more direct route.
Right. This is Jeff again. If I may, I certainly appreciate that. I think the avenue that the town council and the town manager brought to everybody was the Public Building Commission. Now, I can't go back on that. I can't go back to the town council and go, that's not what we're doing. I think it's been handed off to you the way it's supposed to be, I understand, from going to the town council and referring it to the Public Building Commission. So it's no longer in the hands of the Board of Ed, other than we just received the report like the town did. I will tell you, however, that, Jim's correct. There's a lot of activity relative to this, certainly in Connecticut, but across the nation probably. And there's already money coming in to the Board of Ed and town relative to grants from the federal and state government, and some of the eligibilities, some things eligible that are in those grants are air quality systems. So this is a big deal. And all the thing is we know that we tried to say that, in conversations that, there are some short-term things that can be done very correctly. The Public Building Commission want to take a look at this and decide whether it's short-term. And one of the things they said was, because the Public Building Commission is already dealing with at least one of the schools, if not more, relative to HVAC systems, they were the ones to take a look and see if we needed any short-term items to be done and recommend. So that decision has already been made by the town council.
Can I ask a question? This is Tom Salmino. I haven't seen any of this. I haven't seen the statement of need from the Board of Ed to the town council. I haven't seen what the town council has authorized or directed us to do. Am I to understand that the town council has authorized the Public Building Commission to implement any and all recommendations or directives or whatever they're included in the study as we see fit? Is that what I'm to understand?
Tom, this is Mike. I actually have the resolution, and I'll read it for the group since
If you would, please. Yeah.
Yeah. Topic. Refer the final report of commissioning, balancing, and temperature control work related to the state of Connecticut guidance for school systems for the operation of central and non-central ventilation systems during the COVID-19 pandemic memo from Sustainable Engineering Solutions LLC of Berlin, Connecticut to the Public Building Commission for its review and recommendations. So basically, it's just referring the report to this group for review and recommendations. There's no statement of need. It's not a project. It's more or less review it and recommend. And that's how I interpret it. So it's not your typical, we're going to build a building, get a statement of need, run with it.
Sure. Yeah,
Well,
because normally it would be, sorry?
No, go ahead, Tom.
No, I was going to say, I guess normally if we had clear recommendations coming out of this and we had clear direction from the Board of Ed to the town council that we need to and want to move forward with these recommendations, the statement of need would be implement these recommendations and we could move forward with that. The fact that, we're being asked to evaluate which ones are maintenance or deferred maintenance issues, which ones are short-term issues, which ones may be in our charge per the charter. I don't know. I'm just trying to understand.
And I'll add a further one. Which ones comply with the CDC quote guidelines, whatever they are today or tonight? That's an uncomfortable position to put the Public Building Commission in when none of us are medical personnel. So while I understand how we're supposed to go forward, if we say we have to meet certain criteria, that's fine. But this nebulous, the COVID compliant crap is not something that I think we should be in charge of.
Well, but I agree, Tom. And I guess, after saying what I said, I guess the only thing that I am thinking of is, do we get a group of people together, including town staff, Mike, Doug, Jeff? Do we get whomever else, some members of the Public Building Commission together to figure out, how do we sort through the report about what's what, as opposed to just saying, okay, PBC, whatever you guys think, make your recommendations. Because I don't think it's just us. I think we have to rely on the town staff, individuals I mentioned, and maybe others, to figure out what is what and put it in the right categories. And then I think to Don's point, then we can move forward with figuring out what are the costs or what can we cost to implement. But I don't, I think it's a group effort. It's not just our group.
Huh? It also would be nice to know what the federal government or the state government or the town is going to cover in terms of costs. You hear a lot of stuff, to Jim's point, that, there's funding that's going to be discussed, but in getting that from that concept into practice, oftentimes is never happens. At least it doesn't happen the way where we'll have 1,000 people, we'll have 1,000 different ways of how those mechanics actually work. So this is a tiger by the tail in terms of paying this. This could be a lot of money. And if we go ahead and do this and somebody later on says, well, you didn't really need to spend that. Some medical guy says, well, you could have done this, this, and this. I mean, nobody's right and nobody's wrong in a situation like this, but it would be really nice, to your point, to get some direction. Because if it's left to us, who knows if we're right.
So, this is Don. Just correct me if I'm wrong anywhere. What I'm saying is, I guess the parameters came out from the state of Connecticut for these buildings to go through and make sure it's acceptable to state guidelines. There's not a law. There's nothing on there. We went out and hired SES to go into buildings to see what buildings complied or did not comply with the guidelines laid down by the state. So is that all true so far?
Kind of looks that way.
Yes.
Okay.
Kind of looks that way. Okay.
Okay, so if you read through the report, it's pretty clear, if you read the executive summary, that's what, in fact, what they did. And you broke it down into multiple categories. So it's let's say it's clear as mud, really, what needs to be done until we fully understand all the parts and pieces. But I think the initial part was the guideline was met from the standpoint that they went in, they followed the state guidelines, and they gave us this report based on what they know. And I think that's what we have in our hands currently, gentlemen. And I think we really need to understand what that makes up. And we also need to get pricing on it so we know, monetize it, let's say, to figure out what this is really worth. I don't know if this is worth, $100,000. I don't know if it's worth $5 million. I have no idea right now sitting here. And I think we need to get our arms around that part of it as well. So if the town council gave us direction to basically to figure it out, I think is what they told us to do. We get back to them. I think from there, I don't think the Board of Ed right now can even put together a statement of need because they don't know what they need. I mean, it's up to us to try to work with them to come up with what that statement of need needs to say. And then also too, if we have some preliminary pricing on it, let's say if we separate this out, some of this is deferred maintenance, some that's actually, we got to get this done to meet the standard and put the dollars on it. I think that gives us a little bit clearer direction. The last part of this is these are all recommendations. We'd still need to hire an engineering firm to do the design for all this and stamp a set of drawings. So I think as a public building commission, what we do is narrow this down a little bit, get it out to bid to a bunch of MEP firms, use this data that was provided by SEC to get the cost back for them to do a design on it. I think that would be step one. And again, if anyone thinks I'm wrong or disagree, holler out.
Well, I may be mistaken, but I thought we were at the last meeting, we were waiting for this balancing report, and we didn't know what it was gonna say, but we're waiting on this so we can move forward on the Woodland School project.
I think that's separate.
Right, but part of the change in the contract was to make sure it covers the
We're going to
COVID-19
discuss that in the next item.
and have access to this information.
Correct.
Which is
Yeah.
the long-term mandate instead of the short-term mandate.
Right.
So I agree that we need to figure out what the costs are gonna be, and maybe we do some of the short-term stuff for some of these other schools, but we move forward maybe on Woodland because we're closer to having that done.
It's probably up to us to come up with a phase one, phase two, and get it priced out.
And it may be accelerated faster than what was originally anticipated based on the costs.
This is what you gave us, Mike, is the 8-page or whatever. This is the recommendation?
No.
Well, that's just the summary.
He said, okay.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I know, but is this a summary of it?
I think that's what Dan Dupre's comments on that, whoever, I'm not familiar.
Yeah, there's a paragraph here. It says, during the investigation, it was noticed that many of the elementary school unit ventilators were found to be switched to the off position. It was also noted that many of the unit ventilators were disabled due to operational issues or noise complaints. Where possible, it is recommended that unit ventilators be left on during occupied hours to provide ventilation to the spaces. These classrooms may also be good candidates for mobile filtration units in lieu of making the expensive and required repairs to the unit ventilators. Overall, it is recommended that the elementary school HVAC systems be renovated soon to bring the facility up to date with standard industry and the needs of the facility. So, and I agree with Don, but I think maybe the best approach would be for us to recommend to the town council that we put all three schools out to bid for consulting.
Right.
And keep them all separate. And let the firms choose who they bid, right? So give all three schools their own RFP. And let's get it out to bid, send out this report with all of them. And separate it out into three different reports, and we'll pick three different firms and we'll let them give us recommendations.
You think that direction's clear enough to get an RFP? I mean, what are you gonna price? If I got that, I'd say, what do you want me to price?
You want to price,
I mean, there's a lot of recommendations,
there's a lot of cleaning, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I thought if it was this, you could put this in 4 columns and categories. That is maintenance, highly recommended, or your options, and at least you can look at the columns and say, hey, this is maintenance. Why aren't we cleaning the fins to the AC unit? Or, I mean, there's right now, this is a lot of information that no one could take and do anything with, including us. We can't read a 365-page report and recommend something. We need to have some clear direction to go out and do something.
Right.
Well, I think some of the report on the back end is the commissioning and balancing part of it by the consultant. So in the middle, I know that spreadsheet. I didn't go to the whole thing either, but it's set up like that. And that's probably the genesis of the comment column there. So
I'm going over there first where consultant goes in there and tells us what needs to be done right away.
Well, we gotta be able to pay for this too. We don't have any funds to do it,
So we gotta send it to the town council.
Yeah, we'll put a program and send it to the town council. That's step one.
But I know we don't want, I know it's the next agenda, and Bart, isn't that what we're gonna pay CES to do for,
well, that's the next item, but it was compartmentalized. It was specifically on this, but it does relate to everything you're gonna talk about. Because this report has been sent, and I think Doug LaJoy is on. Doug, are you there? Yeah, I asked him to join. He's from CES, who generated that proposal. So he's here, and I asked him to update the proposal on a number of issues, but also to consider the COVID-related items and also to review the commission report, which he might have already done because I already sent it to him. So if you want to get his take, he's on the line for the next item.
that'd be great.
But if we want to get the benefit of his wisdom now, we can have him join in.
Want to combine items and talk about both at the same time?
I would think so. I think they're related.
Does anybody have any problem with that?
Yeah, because his letter said that
Months ago.
Okay, let's include item 6 here for the elementary school HVAC upgrades. Doug, you wanna give your thoughts on this?
Sure. So I suppose I'll start by saying, hey guys, it is a 300 some odd page report. I didn't review the whole thing. We've been involved in the Willard School. We did the original design, I don't know, a couple of years ago, and Mike's has reached out to me for an update to kind of get it back on the street. So that's what we provided a revised proposal to do that. And a couple of weeks ago, Mike sent me the report, sent me the spreadsheet of the, I guess it's the retro commissioning report spreadsheet. That's probably what you guys are looking at. And so I just went to the Willard School because that's really what my concern was. And I kind of looked at the, the deficiencies for the Willard School. And because a lot of them, are, unit ventilator, outside air damper is not working. Okay, another one was unit failed to enable when switched on, another unit ventilator. As part of the project that we were involved in, we were replacing all the unit ventilators. So I really didn't care if it was a deficiency in the piece of equipment that's planned on being replaced. So, of the, 20 or so deficient items on the Willard School, most of them were associated with unit ventilators, similar to the two examples that I just gave. So I kind of concentrated on the, let's see if I can figure out what page I'm on here. Page 7 of the SES report. I'm sorry, page 8, under conclusions and other recommendations, where, I'll tell you, we've been doing a lot of COVID-19 studies over the last, 6 or 8 months now. And it really comes down to the recommendations that they made earlier in this, maybe a page or two before this, these recommendations, where it's talking about ventilation rates, filtration, changing schedules so that you're opening the building, before the kids or before the occupants get there, and extending the day. So all of those things are typically incorporated into our designs today. So I kind of look at them and say, that's the baseline. And I think they're kind of assuming the same thing, assuming there's a new system. The problem with ventilation rates, filtration, schedule is not that big of a deal. But ventilation and filtration rates is some of the old equipment, like your unit ventilators, probably can't handle increased ventilation or increased filtration. The static pressure that increased better filtration will put on your equipment, it just can't overcome it. So, like I said, those are kind of like baselines, and those are included in what we would design in any retrofit or new building system. What I tried to address in our proposal is where SES talks about, again, on page, it is on page 7, the conclusions and other recommendations. They have a paragraph, and it says, to that end, there has been a flurry of new and older technologies in the marketplace that could be employed to address the future needs. So again, in my proposal, when I talk about the study that I recommended for COVID-19, that would be to look at these specific items like electronic air filters, UV sterilization, bipolar ionization, and portable room filters. Of all the studies that we've done with all of the school districts that we've been working with, we've looked at these systems on a couple of them, and based on first cost, maintenance cost, and operating cost of these systems, nobody has decided to go and purchase this, I'll say, special equipment. The ASHRAE guidelines, the Connecticut School Reopening Guidelines, all follow effective ventilation and good air filtration, and that's your baseline to meet the COVID-19 requirements.
Hey, Doug, this is Tom Reed. Just so I can understand one thing, a lot of this 367-page report, it's been pointed out that the deficiencies, a lot of them could be, probably are, related to deferred maintenance, incorrect operation of the equipment, and yet the report was done by SES. It seems to me illogical to take the conclusions of a report that sort of measured air quality when a lot of the equipment wasn't even being used properly. Now, in your professional opinion, it sounds like it wouldn't matter if it were used properly. It couldn't handle what the new statistics need to reflect. Is that a fair statement, or am I generalizing too much?
Again, I haven't reviewed the 350 some odd pages. All I took a look at was the Willard School,
Right.
so if you're asking me if the unit ventilators in the Willard School can meet the COVID-19 reopening guidelines, I would say probably not. I have not looked at each fan motor to tell you that it can overcome, presumably they were designed for MERV 8. And I don't know if you folks are up to speed on the terminology. I'm happy to talk about the terminology and just interrupt me if you'd like me to go there. But the unit ventilators were probably designed for MERV 8 filtration, which is a kind of a standard level filtration. When we design a school today, we're doing MERV 13 on everything. When these buildings were designed 30 years ago or so, MERV 8 was probably the way to go. Sorry about my cat, guys. So, what happens when you increase the level of filtration, the particles that the filter will cling on to are smaller. What that does for you is that it increases the static pressure on the fan motor. And what I don't know sitting here today is if your existing fan motors can overcome that static pressure or not. So that's one thing. The second thing is outdoor air or ventilation air. They're synonymous. Those two terms are synonymous. Typically, a unit ventilator that was put in again, back in the 60s or 70s, whenever the school was built, had a small amount of ventilation air going into the space. Typically, what we see is 15 to 20% of the total air is coming from the outdoors. And what COVID-19 and ashtrays come with is they want a high level of ventilation. Somewhere we've read 30% of the air. So whatever air is needed in the space, 30% of that should come from the outdoors. Now, can you go from 20 to 30? You might be able to. If they designed the existing unit ventilators with a large enough heating coil to overcome the amount of outside air on a 0-degree day, it could certainly do the job. Again, we were under the impression that you wanted to replace these. You've had some failures in the equipment over the years. You can't find replacement parts. So, typically unit ventilators after, 30 or 40 years, they're well past their useful life, and people just plan on replacing them. And I get it. You've got 3 elementary schools that are in this predicament, and it's costly. I understand that. So, I think what the commissioning folks that you hired, SES, did was they looked at it and said, well, what's working? What's not working? How do we get, if you were going to keep these systems up and running, how do we get them to meet the school reopening guidelines? I think that's the way they approach this.
Gotcha. Although reopening guidelines is kind of a funny term, since it appears that the kids have been in school this entire time, and not only in Berlin, but I know I have friends who teach in other towns in other states, and some have been very successful and pretty much didn't change much other than they opened the windows a lot and they closed the school every Wednesday to clean it down. So I'm a little bit uncertain as to the conclusions of the report and whether they would be different if a lot of the teachers decided to put on this machinery that's there to help with the air, but because it's too loud, they turn it off, or they think it's too loud. I mean, it seems to me, I know at McGee there was a huge problem with that. People didn't use the heaters in the air because they thought in their mind, whether they were right or wrong is it's really not part of the issue, but they just turned them off. They weren't working at all. So the money was spent. It was anticipated that certain things were happening throughout the entire school, and it just wasn't being followed because people turned these machines off. And I suspect that based on the reading of this report while you're talking, that is a recurring problem throughout schools, especially where the equipment is a little older and the controls are set, by classroom rather than centrally by either janitorial staff or people who know what the heck they're doing. So it's well, I guess we have to just do the best we can with what we've been given.
Let's ask.
So since we're into the next, I guess, let's ask Doug if anybody's got questions to his proposal
And just as background, I did ask Doug to add in something about as a line item because COVID was so, that's all we're talking about with schools. I asked him to just, because he had an exclusion in the proposal saying it didn't address any COVID. So I said, well, can you put a line item so that this group can take a look at it? And he approached it. And Doug, I'll let you speak to how you approached it because I had put the COVID design right into the upgrade, so the CDs would have it and it won't be additional design fee. And he approached it for a different way. And I'll let him explain why.
Well,
Sure.
Or you can continue, Mark.
yeah, I'll let you go, Doug, but I mean, obviously you had a paragraph, he's gonna do it on an hourly basis.
If you agree.
With an allowance of $4,500 is the way I read it, so.
Right, that's the way we read that? Yeah, okay.
Over and above the original proposal.
Yeah, over and above.
How many hours is that estimated to be, Doug? Any idea?
20 or 30 hours, depends on our staff member.
Because we don't have.
Okay. Now, in your opinion, is that enough time to do this based upon what you're hearing tonight and what that report says?
So if I could back up a second. So, our base design is going to meet the state of Connecticut reopening guidelines. So, what we're doing is we designed a replacement unit ventilator project. So we were putting in new unit ventilators and taking out the old ones, right? And those would have the increased filtration levels as well as the increased ventilation rates. So that's the baseline COVID-19 design, right? That's included. What I did was, again, going back to the SES report under their conclusions and other recommendations, the 4 items that I talked about, the electronic air filters, the UV sterilization, bipolar ionization, and then the portable room filters. Because I didn't want to ignore this, Mike and I had a conversation about the COVID-19 to address these specific items. And I said, listen, guys, listen, Mike, we've done a bunch of these studies for different school communities, and it's always talked about, and maybe you folks have read about all of these technologies that are out there. It's talked about a lot in the industry. There's a big buzz. There's a lot of, I'll call them snake oil salesmen out there selling different products. Whenever there's a hype going on, they try and sell these products.
Yep.
I'm not saying they don't work.
Yep.
They do work. They do work. They have their place. They're expensive. They're expensive for first cost and maintenance cost and keeping the systems up and running. So we've done a lot of studies. We've broached these topics with other school districts. One of them chose to go portable room filters in one of their schools because they had no ventilation in one of the wings. Of all of the other studies we've done, none of them have decided to do these. I don't know if they call them enhancements, or I forget what their terminology here is. I guess it's just their other recommendations. So it's not a requirement to meet the Connecticut reopening guidelines. It is a future proofing of your school. It is, this is SES's words, by the way, future proofing of your school for future pandemics. What
Right.
those are, who knows what they are. So again, we haven't seen anyone implement these in a public school scenario.
We
So
need,
all I was saying, I was trying to address it saying, hey, they've mentioned it. If you guys want us to study it for each of you, for this school in particular, we're happy to study it.
Right.
Study it. It's going to cost about $4,500. We're happy to do it hourly. In the end, we don't think you're going to do it, but that's your call.
Okay. Gotcha. So your baseline, $26,000 is COVID compliant with respect to the I shouldn't say that. That's a bad term. It meets the Connecticut state guidelines as
Yes,
as they exist.
for ventilation and filtration, yes.
and that's what
Okay.
we need to stick
Okay.
to.
Yep.
That, we need to stick
Okay.
to this for
I
a
agree.
year.
I think we should. Yep.
For a year, I've learned that you have to listen to the guidelines and meet the guidelines, but you gotta stay consistent with what the guidelines are. And if you try to venture off and do your own guidelines, you just open yourself up for trouble. If we meet at the guidelines, that's what our goal is. And we need to stay focused, and if that's what the $26,000 includes, we can look, like Doug said, we can look at these other things and just recommendations. As long as we're meeting the guidelines, we're doing what we're supposed to do.
And just to clarify, of the 26,000, the 14,000 was to do the revise the construction documents. The rest is bid services and construction admin. So the first scope item would be $14,000 to do upgrade the construction drawings.
Okay, so my question to Doug is, what's the timeline to get this done?
What did I say here? I said 4 to 6 weeks.
So
we can.
And this is just Willard's. This is just Willard School, correct?
Yeah. So do we already have a contract?
No, we don't. I checked with Doug, and I actually had, I asked, actually Doug Solik, I checked with Doug Solik, that previous contract. And Doug LaJoy was actually referring that, saying it was additional service on top of that. He had said, that's another reason why he updated his proposal, to make this not refer back to the original contract with the Board of Ed.
So Doug LaJoy, you'll sign our contract, correct? I see you have an agreement here, but we're gonna send you our contract.
Sure, we'll take a look at it.
So just one question, your timeline was for just item number 1,
Yes.
and then how long do you think the bid services be time-wise?
Well, typically, we'll give you folks will advertise for bid, and typically, we've seen 2 weeks to 4 weeks as a bid period. So that's really, that'd be, a walkthrough with contractors and answering any questions, reviewing the bids with you folks.
I think we advertise for 30 days.
Yeah. Okay.
4 weeks standard, yeah.
Okay, so cut to the chase, why can't we expedite contract to get this going?
We can.
We talked about this contract for.
Yeah, we did.
Waiting for the.
No, but because we were waiting for the commissioning report.
We were waiting for the commissioning for all of the schools. That's right.
And that was sent to him too.
Which isn't gonna enter into play at all.
Well, it's in the spirit of the report, moving Willard forward is what they're looking for.
Right.
And we're ready to move Willard forward. It's just those other 2 schools, we gotta get the prices and do all the.
And Nick, that's in his fee to review now, and that was also added to his scope. So he's gonna actually look at the Willard School recommendations, which he's already done, and just make sure that he knows what came out of those reports and then update. But from what he's saying, it really, Doug, I guess you can clarify, it really wouldn't make much of a difference anyway, because everything's gonna be brand new.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's gonna be compliant.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what you gotta think about.
Yeah,
And yes, this is only Willard School. Well, let's get Willard done.
yeah.
Then let's move on to the next 2 schools.
Parallel
We
track
have
this
this money,
cost analysis
right?
for the other
Yes, we do.
schools.
Yeah.
And see how rapidly we have to bring the other 2 schools.
Yeah, I make a motion that we accept the Willard School for items 1 and 2 at this time. and move forward with this immediately?
I second.
You have a first, and a second.
Second was
Any,
Tarzan.
any discussion by the members? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. So we're gonna move forward on Woodland School.
Okay.
Now we need.
Now,
to
originally, what we were charged with doing, sort of as an information thing, was to try to get the cost of this for all three schools. Now that we know what it is for one, we can extrapolate this, I think, or just at least give our best estimate as of March 11th, what it would cost to do the same work for the other two schools. And then,
Are we done? Are we done talking? Are we done?
Well, if Duncan wants to stick around to listen to this, or maybe offer comments, but the next step to me would be to be able to solicit costs for the next two schools and at least provide a budget, because that's all we're supposed to do, is provide a budget so they can put it in their planning.
Correct.
Oh.
Step one, we gotta get the engineering, which we've done.
Well, we gotta get a budget for the engineer. And then we need to be authorized to go do the next two.
He actually did give us, Doug,
Yeah.
you already sent in an email format, I think it was 45 and 50 for the other two schools, you know. Doug, do you have the email you sent with the other two schools?
I was just gonna look at that, Mike.
It's,
Oh, well, actually, Nick has it here.
Griswold, the design is 58,500, the bid's 1,500, construction administration is 15,000. For Hubbard, the design is 45,000, the bid is 1,400, and the CA services is 11,600. The total is 75,000 for Griswold and 58,000 for Hubbard. For all three.
And that was in September, yeah.
And we gotta get that to the council,
Yes.
so they can put it, and they may wanna expedite that money.
You probably need to put this in a proposal first instead of an email
Right.
and get it in front of the council.
Then they can, if they wanna expedite that, they can authorize those funds so we can proceed with the
All right,
next.
so you want to request two proposals?
For the other schools.
Yeah.
We just did this for this, we just voted on it.
No.
Move forward, so that's done.
Right,
So it's just the two additional schools.
Right.
right. All right, Doug, could you do two proposals? Just expanding on your bullet points in your September 16th email?
Yep, be happy to.
Separate.
Yeah, two separate ones. Okay. Glad you attended, Doug.
Yeah.
And in the meantime,
You should ask Jeff and Ashley if they have any questions before he goes.
well, Jeff, Ashley, do you have any questions of Doug before he goes away?
Yeah, this is Jeff. I have a question. I know that I heard your opinion, given the information that you looked at the SES report. Obviously, it said to me that you don't believe any of those alternate ideas or alternate technologies are worth doing, and that's obviously your opinion. Is what the Public Building Commission is doing now is saying, rather than considering any of those things in the short term, to go immediately forward and ask the council to do new HVAC systems in all three elementary schools? Is that what I'm?
No.
No, that isn't what we
Just
did.
getting,
No,
just getting the
no.
design.
No,
Okay, let me ask.
we had the HVAC for Willard School ready to go and get final contract documents ready for bidding. So we expedited Willard School. The next step is the other two schools. So as we move forward in getting a proposal, we're gonna look at the alternate cost analysis for the temporary solutions. And we're gonna compare those temporary solutions with the final design and make some kind of judgment as to what is the most prudent way to, the financially prudent way to move forward.
Well,
Okay.
Well, and I also
I'm
think
sorry,
it's
I got the
important.
wrong, I'm sorry, I got the wrong impression. I thought that when Doug gave his opinion on the other ones, that you were gonna go forward and not bother with those, but try to get his contract and go forward with the systems on all three schools, which again is fine with, which is fine. I would have to ask what the timeline is relative to getting all three schools done and how important it may be to look at the short term fixes relative to the other two schools, or maybe all three schools. I don't know anything about your schedules.
I don't think that's our decision. I don't think our decision is to the schools. I think we're going to provide them with costs, and they're going to decide whether they want to put a short-term solution together for the other two schools, or they just want to move immediately to the other two schools for a permanent fix.
All right, I understand. Thank you.
This is Tom Salmino. Can I also say something?
Absolutely.
I also, this is Tom Salmino. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Go ahead,
Yes.
Tom.
All right, sorry, thank you. No, I think Doug also said that it was beyond his opinion. I think, Doug, you said that you didn't see other schools, any other schools, implementing the short-term solutions unless they had little to no ventilation. Or did I mishear you, Doug?
Nope, that's exactly what I said.
So I think, Jeff, I think that's important to note. But I think to evaluate, if there is an overwhelming need or opportunity to implement any of the short-term solutions, that's where I think a separate working group may be appropriate to address some of those. That's just my thoughts.
Yep.
Thank you.
I understand.
And Tom, I might recommend, put a notice out there across the board to all teachers, don't turn off HVAC units. I mean, they know the importance of what's going on. If they're turning off unit ventilators because they're noisy or whatever reason, it's a no-no. In our district, we don't turn these things off, period.
No, I appreciate that. No, this is obviously it's a very difficult topic, sensitive topic, and there's a lot to be said about it. But and at the same time, there can be a lot of generalizations. I just want to make sure that we're all hearing the same thing and recognizing that yes, we do have to look at it. Yes, we do have to evaluate it and understand it. Sometimes it's easier just to get a smaller group of all the affected stakeholders together to do that look for that review.
I understand. Thank you very much, guys, and thank you very much for taking this up today.
Thank you for your time, Jeff.
Take care, Jeff.
Thank you, Doug.
Okay.
All right. Have a good night, folks.
Hey, Doug,
Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Doug.
I don't know if you've gone through that list. If you put a list together on, immediacy of some of that work and what's repaired, is there something that helps us kind of weed through that you have, or? I mean, is there a list that you have of immediate short-term goals that you see?
You mean on the wither list from the SES report, you mean, or?
Yeah. Did you read the whole thing?
Well, again, all I did was went to the conclusions and recommendations in the report itself, and then I studied the Excel spreadsheet that had, 20 or so line items. And again, it was mostly, the equipment is not operable, or the actuators are inoperable or failed, those sorts of things. And I said, well, if we're replacing them, I really don't care about that because it'll all be new equipment. If you're saying, should we be fixing the actuators before we go to bid and replace the units, I can certainly weigh in on that if that's what you're asking me.
All right, well, that may be future stuff. I'm just.
Well,
Yeah.
it might not be bad. I mean, we've got Willard going forward, but maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea. Just take a look at Griswold and Hubbard and see if there's anything pressing that the maintenance department can't handle that might need to be just Band-Aid.
Right.
Sure.
All right.
The short-term project.
Just, it's going to be another 3 or 4 months to get anything else.
Right.
Are you all going to make a motion that CES do 2 separate additional proposals?
I don't think.
We don't need to
have
have
to,
to.
yeah.
Just gonna put it together to propose.
Yeah, we're just requesting proposals, so it's more when he gets them in, then that'll be the next action.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure. Have a good night, folks.
Thanks, Doug.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Doug.
My pleasure.
Okay. So do we want to move forward then on the short-term solution? Or do we want to? The price.
In Willard, I think we get the pricing, right?
Well, let's try, but it's,
I think it's prudent to get the pricing on all of them and then send it to council, and let them make a decision. I mean, if the costs are quote unquote reasonable, once we get the pricing in, it becomes a no-brainer. I mean, this is deferred maintenance. It's got to be fixed at some point.
Yeah,
You know,
Right. This is a combination of deferred maintenance.
It is.
It's wish list of things like that you said, like no school's putting in.
Yeah.
And so what are you pricing? That's what I.
Well, I think what he said made the most sense. What he's putting together is the pricing just to meet the guidelines for the city.
Yes, I thought you were talking about short term.
well, right.
No, I'm not looking short or long. I'm looking, it's one and the same. I don't see there's no short-term fixes here, because if he's got to go in and pull a unit apart and make modifications to the units, we're already into the long-term fix. There's no short-term fix. The only short-term fix that they have in here is temporary rental units that they're gonna roll into these rooms. The cost of those temporary rental units, if you don't outright buy them, you're toast in a month.
But that's what I'm getting at. Maybe I misunderstood. Were you talking about giving somebody that 356-page report and telling them to price it?
No, you can't do
No,
that.
you can't. That's
No,
what I'm
you
saying.
can't.
It's impossible.
No, I was thinking we were gonna do a cost analysis on the short-term fixes for those two schools and compare them against the cost.
But who's determining what the short-term
And
fix
that's what they'll
is?
talk about.
Okay, now, if CES is doing it, I would say, yes, I agree with it. You can't take with that 356-page report, no one can dissect that and say, the short-term fix is to price these 50 items.
Well, they've got some units in here that aren't running.
Yeah. We just
You have to
authorized him.
define it.
We just authorized him right now to put pricing together to do the same thing he did for Willard.
Oh, that's a whole other stuff. We're
Yeah.
going out with a no bid.
We gotta
Yeah,
fix that.
that's why I tried to get him up. That's why I was trying to get him
It's,
before we had that conversation.
it's not, right now, the way I say, I agree with you, it's a no bid situation we're in. But what we're doing is we're actually bidding all the work out.
Yeah.
So it's a design concept.
Well, the town council still has to authorize this to proceed with a no bid.
Correct. It's a design, it's a no bid
Got
design.
it to 10 grand unless they change the.
You know, yeah, I agree with you, but what authorization do we have to begin with when they went out?
I don't know where.
When we asked them for pricing for the three of them?
We asked originally,
We had
this
money.
goes back a long time ago, because we asked for Willard only.
Yes,
And we
there's
got,
money in the bank for that.
we got approval for Willard only
We
already.
have
I don't remember
$26,000.
Yeah. That's how we got where we are right now with Willard. The other school, go ahead.
But what we did ask, I thought I remember something where we asked for at least proposal for the other two schools. That's how we got to that point with,
No, you're right.
yeah,
Nobody else did it.
no, yeah, we asked for that.
Right, we got nobody to bid these.
When you say no one had them. No, these are, right, these were, the upgrade to Willard was because they did the final design already. That was
We
the
couldn't
cost.
get anybody else to bid the other schools. I think we went out, wasn't that what we?
I didn't send an RFP out for those. This was just, I think, for you guys to understand what the numbers were. And they did not do any design work on these other two schools, which is why these are what they are.
I think we had designed.
So maybe, you're right, it's no bid, and that might be a problem.
Well, we didn't have design, but we asked for pricing. I thought the town council, but maybe I'm wrong.
Doug, you're still on, right?
So
Doug Solik?
I'm here.
What did we-
Yes.
A few years back, what were we chasing where we couldn't get anybody to bid? Was it the HVAC upgrades and replacements? What were we trying to bid? And we kept rewording it, we kept changing their experience, how many years experience?
That's not ringing a bell, but just, I mean, how we got to Willard was in the capital plan. Our intent was to do one elementary school at a time. Willard being the oldest vintage unit ventilator. So in the capital plan, we had money for design and budgeting, which is CES responded to the RFP. They were chosen and they've been with us ever since. But as far as Hubbard and Griswold, there's never been an RFP for design, consulting, engineering, anything like that. So this is why kind of getting comprehensive now that, if the budget presented from 2017 from CES, we were under $1 million to a couple $3 million. Now the depending on what we decide to do for a system, you know, now we're in millions. And if we're going to do the 3 schools together, the question came up that, do we want bonding authorization to have the authorization to do the projects over a time frame, or do we want to bond one school at a time? You know, anything over 5 million by charter has to go to referendum. So, you know, it's a decision will have to be made if we're going to do all 3 or do one at a time based on age.
Okay.
Willard being the oldest, then Griswold, then Hubbard, based on, you know, the integrity of the units now and the deficiencies we have. I mean, they're 30 years old. I mean, we have rotted evaporators, condensers. I mean, we try to fix and replace what we can, what's cost effective. But if it's going to be $6,000-$7,000 to rebuild a unit, we can put a $500 portacool in there and open the windows, and we still have, you know, the heating coil works. It acts as a radiator. You know, we've made provisions over the last several years, but I mean, this didn't happen overnight. It's been, you know, decade worth of discussion and planning that this day would come, and here we are. So we certainly exceeded life expectancy at all 3 elementary schools.
Hey, Doug, you brought up a good point. If by charter anything over $5 million has to go to town referendum, what takes precedence over what? If to open the school or to reopen the school, which is already open, if we have to spend $8 million, does that still have to go to referendum? Or is there any, and this is obviously not a question for you, but for the town attorney, is there any avenue to expedite that so we don't have to wait for a referendum or give it to the town for a referendum if we're mandated to do it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's still time to get it on the April budget referendum, which it may be too late. I don't know how much time.
No. My point is, do we have to go to referendum when the state is saying, look, you must do this in order to reopen the school?
That's certainly a good question. You know, the other issue too is that if we're going to do it all local share, we don't necessarily have to meet all the state criteria for design. If we're going to ask for state funding for this, then it has to go to the Office of School Construction, and it's going to be a lot more time and a lot more money. So if we can do it on our own with our own local share, it'll certainly save us some money and time.
Yeah, well, right. But that's the other thing. If we go ahead and do it and spend the money, is this money that's being allocated by the federal government going to be able to repay that which we did on our own, or do we have to go through all of their guidelines and wait, you know, a century for something to happen? Do we know that? No.
Everything I've heard from Corporation Counsel, you know, over the last few weeks and few months related to school projects, the minute we take a dollar from the state or the feds, it's a whole different criteria than if we fund it locally.
Okay, that's something I think we ought to. Check with the town attorney, not to go forward, but we ought to understand that, because that has pretty significant ramifications with respect to timing and cost. I mean, we may be able to do it faster, but it may cost the town $25 million. If we wait a year, it may cost us, well, nothing except, you know, our share of whatever the federal government gives back to us. So, and I have one more question, Doug. Do the schools, the either all in general, or does the Board of Education have a staff in the schools that oversees all of the maintenance and the operation, more the operation of equipment, or is that all falling to you guys?
Yeah,
like, is there a policy manual, is there a
staff.
procedure manual on how to operate in class heaters and other equipment in the school, or is that just left to the device of the individual teachers and principals?
Yeah, I mean, the majority of the equipment we can control from the building management system, with the exception of the classroom ventilators at the 3 elementary schools. Everything else is on the building management system that we can turn up and down. So to your point, the custodians and the teachers can turn things, you know, up and down, on and off within the classroom, but everything else we have control over.
Okay. Well, I think we ought to make a recommendation. I don't know who we make it to, whether it's to Jeff Cugno and then on up and to the Board of Ed, but to follow Doug's recommendation, which is to make sure those things are there for a reason. And right now, the paramount reason is air exchange, so we ought to make sure that somehow the message gets to these principals and teachers to leave these things on. And then if there's a case-by-case basis where they have to be turned off, okay. But I guarantee you, if it's anything like McGee was, everybody did their own thing at that school. That was part of the problem. So.
Any
Anyhow,
more comments?
Yeah, I do. And I'm talking from a very practical standpoint and not a legal standpoint or what has to be properly documented for bidding. But, you know, I go back to the old projects have to be shovel ready. And you pointed out that money's gonna come, $1.9 trillion. There's a lot of money in that for schools.
Right.
And if we can somehow move forward to have these two schools engineered,
Right.
we're ahead of the game. If that money comes available, it's shovel ready, it's ready to go. You get estimates and it's ready to go. You're gonna be ahead of the game from all the other schools.
Yeah.
So if somehow we can authorize at least the design money for these other two schools, I think that's a smart thing to do.
The only thing we have to do is have the town council give us the approval to do it. That's it.
Yeah, okay, and
Jim, I can't hear you.
I said, the only thing that has to happen is the town council has to allow us to exceed the $10,000 threshold to award the work.
Bid waiver, right.
And
Right.
I'm not guessing that that's difficult to do, but I could relate our concerns and we're, like you said, if we're ready to buy that equipment in 4 weeks and everybody else is just scrambling to get design work done, we're ahead of the game.
Everything's gonna be short demand, contractors, everybody's short demand, so.
If we take the proposal that we get back from them, from Doug, and bring that to town council, say we'd like a bid waiver for this work, then we're right there.
Yeah, it's just.
So you want me to get those even, okay, so proceed with having Doug send the proposals in for the other two schools, okay?
Yeah.
Right.
You're talking about
Hey,
spending.
hey, Mike,
Yes, Tom,
it probably would be a decent idea when the next time you talk to town council or to Mike, or to Mark, I mean, to say, look, this is what you can expect, and it's gonna happen, so they get prepared to act very quickly when we bring it to them.
well, I'll talk to Arosh, yeah.
They could have the next week.
Yeah, talk to a roof, yeah, exactly, that's fine.
And next week you'll have proposals.
Yeah. Will do.
What's the next town council meeting?
Well, the next one's next Tuesday, and then the following one is, was it
2 weeks after.
2 weeks after that? So I can get on that agenda by proposals in
So I'll go forward next
next week.
We'll call them tomorrow and tell you what the proposal is, so we get out.
No, that would,
You gotta update
Well-
the agenda tomorrow, right?
all the
Can't,
stuff goes out already,
Okay,
it's
we-
already sort of, this is.
just can't functionally.
I'm with you, Katie.
Okay, I mean, it's gonna take
More
them,
than, you know,
we're gonna take them the, whatever you said, 4 to 6 weeks or 4 weeks to get Willard updated. Yeah, and as long as we can go full right into the other two.
Just got something from scratch and,
Yeah,
yeah, that's good, not gonna be 4 to 6 weeks.
right, and we don't want him slowing down Willard to do the other two.
no,
We want Willard done first.
no, but we have to start the process.
Right.
Yeah.
The sooner we get it started, the better off we are. And then we can let the council know the costs.
Well, then you can get an estimate. Now you know, instead of having some projections from.
Might be some conversations you can have over maybe you'll just have. Oh.
Let's move on to watch.
Please,
Lisa's just started. So we're all done with those 2 items. Let's move on to items 7.
up to bid, wait for bid.
That's right, yeah, I did have a couple of questions though, real quick. Just want to let you know, the truck, Hydrochem's rep has gotten, inquiries from two bidders or potential bidders, interested parties, so that's good to hear. And also, he's putting together a layout for the bidders with a couple of different options, so when they contact him, they can send it, and they'll understand what the space requirements are, and all that are. Doug thinks that the HAZMAT report might be in before the bid due date and maybe before, so we can do an agenda if we get that information in on, you know, asbestos and all that other stuff. So my questions are, we're already getting questions from the bidders. How do you want me to handle the agenda? Do you want me to send some of the ones, like some of the ones that are just sort of procedural, I can handle and with Marissa. But as far as anything involved, you want me to send them to you so you can take a look at them? How do you want to?
What kind of?
Well, the only question right now was one guy sent us a note saying he wanted us to find a GC. He was a truck wash. He couldn't say, oh, if you want to do this a better way, you should send me the name of a GC that you've identified. And I was like, whatever.
Yeah,
That's the design. That's educating. But I suspect in the next week or two, this isn't like cookie cutter, so I think we're gonna get something. So I just want to know when I get it, what you want me to do. You want me to send it to the group? You have a sub?
Yeah, just send it to us and we'll respond
Okay.
back to you.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, Hydrochem, the truck wash outfit can have a rep. They offered to have a rep attend the pre-bid, which is on March 18th.
Well, that kind of insinuates that we have a.
Proprietary. And I said to him, I said, I wasn't sure about that. Because I said, don't make he was gonna book a flight. No, all right. And then the other question is, are any of you interested in attending on March 18th? It's a Thursday, 10 o'clock at the highway garage. No?
Next,
I'll tell you what, it's an open invitation.
it's next week.
No, the week after.
I just want to, it's possible.
Oh.
Next week.
I'm sorry.
It's next Thursday.
Sorry, that's right.
Serving leftover corned beef.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
I'll go if you are.
Anyway, yeah, okay, so next week. So it's there, 10 o'clock.
18th.
Yeah.
At
Should we
7.
let you know
10
if
a.m.
we're coming or we just pop in?
Sorry?
Should we let you know if we're coming?
No, you can just come.
We got one thing to part.
If you want to come and run it, you can do that.
I still may work.
Where's it at?
It's at the highway garage.
Not very good planning. If you did it at 11 o'clock, I could walk over to Kensington Market and have lunch. afterwards, you know, so.
Maybe take it.
We could have an early breakfast. So that's it.
All right, guys, any other questions? Any other thing we want to talk about or do you want to adjourn?
Thomas,
Motion to adjourn.
Thomas and Thomas, thank you for your input.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Making motion, second that motion.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Go home.
Nice.
Guys,
Have a good
keep me
night.
awake.
Take care.
Okay. Good night.
Pleasure seeing all. There's one space for change.
Everybody else.
Well, we've been